Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today we're looking at the ultimate blueprint for not just surviving, but actually thriving in today's tech economy. We call it the modern digital stack. We're going to completely break down the architecture of how we build, how we scale, and how we govern the technologies that we rely on literally every single day. Let's get right into it.
So here's a quick look at our agenda. First, the Essential Linux Foundation. Second, decoding generative AI concepts. Third, mastering AI for SEO. And finally, data protection under the DPDP Act.
All right, part one, the Essential Linux Foundation, building the bedrock.
Okay, so think of every modern digital application like a massive skyscraper. And in the tech world, the solid bedrock that everything rests on is the Linux command line. Now, notice the core distinction here. On one side, we have file management. These are your static tools for organizing data, moving things around, keeping the house tidy. But on the other side, process management. This is where the magic happens. This is how you control the active, beating heartbeat of your server. Commands like top or kill give you absolute real-time authority over what your machine is actually doing right this second.
Now, if process management is the heartbeat, then networking is absolutely the nervous system. How fast can you connect your server to the outside world? Pretty much instantly. You use ping to check if a remote server is, actually breathing. You use curl to reach out and grab data from a URL. And you can map out all your active routes with netstat. I know it sounds basic, but it is totally vital.
But listen, before you even think about building out a fancy application, you've got to lock the front door. You get to dictate exactly who can touch your files with Chmod, and you lock down the entire digital perimeter with iptable's firewalls. Secure that bedrock first, guys, because what we're about to build on top of it is incredibly powerful. Moving right along to part two, decoding generative AI concepts, the software of tomorrow. So at the absolute core of this massive new innovation engine are large language models, or LLMs. You've probably heard the term a million times, but what are they? Basically, they're massive AI systems trained on just unbelievable amounts of data, so they can understand and generate text that actually sounds human. They act as the brains, really, bridging the gap between those raw Linux servers we just talked about and the dynamic applications you and I use every single day. But generative AI is not just some magic black box of software. You really need to think of it as a highly complex supply chain. It spans everything from the initial data collection and licensing to the core model development, all the way down to fine-tuning it for incredibly specific use cases. It literally takes an entire digital ecosystem to bring these tools to life.
Which brings up a great question. How do we make these abstract, wild models actually behave? Well, the secret sauce is RLHF, reinforcement learning from human feedback. It turns out, human feedback is what actually steers the ship here. It optimizes the AI's behavior so it acts like a genuinely helpful assistant rather than just some chaotic text generator spitting out nonsense.
And hey, AI isn't just about generating text anymore, right? Diffusion models learn to create incredibly complex visual media by gradually removing noise from a completely randomized, static starting point. Honestly, it's like watching a clear picture emerge from an old snowy TV screen. It's a fascinating, almost reverse entropy process that just proves how insanely versatile this tech has become.
All right, part three, mastering AI for SEO, scaling with strategy. Okay, so we have this amazing tech, but how do we get people to actually see our products? Well, when we apply AI to product growth, keyword research fundamentally shifts. In tools like SEMrush, you really want to pay attention to personal keyword difficulty, or PKD. AI isn't just handing you raw search volumes anymore. It's calculating exactly how difficult a keyword is to rank for based on your specific website's unique authority. I mean, that is a total game changer for your strategy. And that kind of strategic intelligence powers a highly scalable three-step AI content workflow. Let's break it down. First, you draft. You use tools like ZimWriter to build a solid shell right from an outline. Next, you hook the reader by creating PAS introductions using ChatGPT. And finally, you optimize. You use AI to suggest ways to inject real experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trust, your EEAT factors, into your copy. Let's zoom in on that PAS introduction for a second because it is an incredibly powerful psychological hook. Problem, agitate, solution. First, you identify the reader's exact pain point. Then, you actively agitate that problem, poke the bear a little bit to make them really feel that friction. Finally, you present your article as the ultimate solution. When you automate this framework with AI, your engagement is going to absolutely skyrocket.
But whoa, hold on. Major warning here. While you might be super tempted to just fire up these mass generation tools and go wild, blindly publishing raw AI content is a recipe for absolute disaster. Search engines will hit you with a massive spam penalty, basically destroying all the hard work you just put in. In the modern stack, having a human in the loop isn't just recommended, it is literally mandatory.
Which brings us to part 4, data protection under DPDP, securing the perimeter.
So look, we've built our foundational infrastructure. We've used AI to scale our marketing. But with all that scale comes some serious legal responsibility. The Digital Personal Data Protection Act, or DPDP, fundamentally changes how organizations handle digital identity and risk management. It treats user privacy not just as an afterthought or a checkbox, but as a core digital right that has to be integrated directly into your stack from day one.
Legally speaking, you really have to know exactly where you stand in this ecosystem. Are you the data fiduciary? Meaning, are you the big boss deciding the purpose and the methods of processing that data? Or are you the data processor, the entity that's just handling the data strictly on the fiduciary's behalf? You need to know your exact role here because it completely dictates your legal liability.
And what I love about this is looking at the power shifting right back to the users, who are legally called the data principals. They now have legally enforced rights: the right to access their data, the right to demand accuracy, the right to nominate someone to manage it if they're incapacitated, and the right to redressal if something goes wrong. This is a massive, systemic shift toward giving users their power back.
Now, to actually comply with all these new rights? Yeah, compliance becomes a seriously complex engineering puzzle. You have to do some heavy tech mapping, you must identify every single data source, build out centralized consent registries, and keep incredibly detailed processing logs. So suddenly, those raw Linux servers and process management tools we talked about at the very beginning, they become absolutely essential for solving your legal requirements today.
So, let's wrap this up. You've got the foundational Linux tools to build the infrastructure. You know exactly how to leverage generative AI and clever SEO strategies to scale your growth. And now you understand the strict legal compliance required to protect the people actually using your products. All the pieces of the modern digital stack are sitting right there on the table. The only question left is, how responsibly will you build your digital future? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and we'll see you next time.